The first snow of December had just begun to fall over Willow Creek, a quiet little town in Montana. The streets were lined with frosted trees, the coffee shops were lit with soft amber lights, and the smell of cinnamon filled the cold air. In a black SUV that gleamed even under the gray sky, Ethan Cole stared out the window, lost in thought. He was 33, young, rich, and powerful, a name that echoed across Forbes and business headlines. But inside, he was empty. He wasn't coming to Willow Creek for business. He was coming back for something he couldn't quite explain. Maybe closure, maybe peace. Years ago, before the world knew his name, he had been just another struggling man with holes in his shoes and a broken dream. And back then, in his darkest winter, someone had helped him, a woman he never forgot. The SUV stopped in front of a small diner, Maggie's Place. The bell above the door jingled softly as he stepped inside. Warmth, laughter, and the smell of homemade pie filled the air. Behind the counter stood a woman with soft brown hair tied loosely and kind eyes that carried both strength and sorrow. Her name tag read, Maggie Bennett. She looked up, smiled the way people do when they've learned to hide pain with grace. "Good afternoon, stranger. What can I get you?" she asked. Her voice, it was gentle, familiar, like a melody he'd once heard in another lifetime. Ethan's breath caught for a moment. "Coffee, black, please." When she turned to pour his drink, his gaze lingered on her. The curve of her shoulders, the tired elegance of her movements, the way she hummed softly to herself. He recognized her. It had been more than 10 years since that snowy night when a hungry young man had collapsed outside her old bakery. Maggie, a widow struggling to keep her husband's business alive, had found him, fed him, and given him a coat, her late husband's coat. That coat still hung in Ethan's closet, a quiet reminder of where he came from. "You're not from around here, are you?" Maggie asked, setting the coffee on the table. "Not anymore," Ethan said softly. She smiled politely, the kind of smile given to strangers who wouldn't stay long. But something in his eyes made her pause. "Have we met before?" she asked, brow furrowing. Ethan hesitated, the words caught between gratitude and guilt. "Maybe. A long time ago." She tilted her head. "Well, if we did, I hope I was kind." "You were," he whispered. "You saved me." She laughed softly, thinking it was a figure of speech. "I doubt that, but I'm glad you're doing all right now." He wanted to tell her everything, who he'd become, how her small act of kindness had changed his life. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she looked, content in her quiet life, surrounded by memories she didn't want disturbed. So he said nothing. That night, Ethan stayed in town longer than planned. He walked by the frozen lake, the same place he'd once slept on a park bench when he had nowhere else to go. The moon reflected off the ice like a cracked mirror, and in its reflection, he saw his younger self, lost, desperate, cold. He owed everything to a woman who didn't even remember him. The next morning, he returned to the diner. She was there humming, serving coffee to the same small-town faces. "Back already?" she teased. "Your coffee's better than what I'm used to," he said with a small smile. She chuckled. "That's a first. Most folks come for the pie." He pointed at the board. "Then maybe I'll try that next." Her eyes softened. "Apple pie, my husband's old recipe. I kept it on the menu after he passed." "I'm sorry," Ethan said quietly. "It's all right," she replied, her tone calm, practiced. "He's been gone for almost 12 years. Time doesn't heal everything, but it teaches you how to breathe again." And in that moment, Ethan realized something strange. He hadn't really breathed in years either. As the days passed, he found reasons to keep returning. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes for pie, and sometimes for no reason at all. He learned about her son, now in college, about her love for the morning sun, and the way she still set an extra place at the table every Christmas. And though she still didn't remember him, Ethan found peace in her presence, a warmth that money could never buy. But fate has a way of circling back, because one snowy evening, Maggie found an envelope on her counter, sealed, elegant, with her name written in careful handwriting. She opened it slowly. Inside was a short note and a check made out to Maggie's Place diner, enough to save it from closing. But it wasn't the check that made her heart stop. It was the final line of the letter. "Once, on a cold night, you gave a stranger your husband's coat. You told him not to give up. He never did. E. Cole." Maggie froze. The world seemed to fade around her. She looked toward the door where Ethan had just left, snow falling behind him like soft memories. She whispered his name for the first time, Ethan, and for the first time in years, she felt something stir inside her chest. Not pain, not grief, but something far gentler. Snow still blanketed Willow Creek the next morning. The small diner's windows glowed warm against the pale winter light. Maggie stood behind the counter, holding the letter again, her heart steady but trembling. She didn't know whether to feel shock or gratitude, maybe both. When Ethan walked in later that day, she didn't smile like usual. She just looked at him, really looked. "So it was you," she said quietly. Ethan nodded once. "You saved me when you didn't have to. I never forgot." Maggie set down the coffee pot and sighed softly. "You didn't owe me anything, Ethan. I was just doing what anyone would do." He shook his head. "No, you were the only one who did." For a moment, silence filled the diner, broken only by the hum of the old heater and the clatter of cups in the back. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me again," he said finally. "I wasn't sure either," she replied, her tone gentle. "But I'm glad you came back." He smiled, the first real one she'd seen from him. It wasn't the polished grin of a billionaire. It was warm, human, and a little uncertain. Days passed, and Ethan stayed in Willow Creek longer than he planned. He helped fix the old sign outside, repainted the diner's walls, even repaired the broken window by the corner table. The townspeople whispered about the handsome stranger who seemed to care too much for a widow's small cafe. But Ethan didn't care what they said. Each day spent beside Maggie felt like something he'd been missing for years. A quiet life, a kind smile, a sense of belonging. One evening, as they closed up together, Maggie turned off the lights and looked out at the falling snow. "I used to think my story ended when my husband died," she said softly. "But maybe it just changed direction." Ethan looked at her, his eyes calm and sure. "Maybe it was waiting for you to start again." She met his gaze, the faintest smile touching her lips. Outside, the world was still cold and white, but inside that little diner, everything felt warmer. And though neither said the words, both knew what they meant. That sometimes love doesn't arrive when you expect it, but when your heart is finally ready to remember what it feels like to live again. The lights went out, and the door to Maggie's place closed softly behind them. But this time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of peace.